That speech in Las Vegas to the NAACP, he said, I'm all in. Again, he can't be more clear where he's coming from. He sent the letter to Congress. Even after that, members of Congress said, we need an answer, make a decision, to which he said, I've made my decision. I'm all in. He reiterated that yesterday. Those national polls are neck and neck. There has been some slippage, but still mostly within the margin of error in those battleground states. Trump has definitely made up a little ground, but my gosh, those are all winnable, the Biden campaign would tell you. I think what people are seeing, though, is not the gaffes of Joe Biden of the past. They're seeing gaffes as a result of age. And there are concerns, and polls show this, even within the Democratic Party. Is he up for the job? But as Joe says, make up your mind. If he's too old for the job, just say that. But you got to point to some data that shows he can't win if you're saying he can't win.
Right. And polls well before the debate showed the Democrats thought he might be too old, and that's only increased. But it can't be said enough. Polls show this is a pretty static race, and it just seems so premature that there were pundits on Saturday night or Sunday in the wake of that shooting saying, that's it, the race is over. We have this image, this defiant image of Donald Trump, his fist raised, blood on his face, game over. And it's clearly not. This is still a tight race. Now, the Biden team has work to do still. They know that, and that includes fending off voices within their own party. First of all, we're seeing the president go at the coalitions. Yesterday's event was about black voters, the NAACP. Today, he's got an event squarely geared at Latino voters. The Supreme Court push that we detailed earlier in the show is a nod towards progressives. It came from a call he had with them in the last few days. He's trying to shore up his base of support because there are still some Democratic lawmakers out there who want to try to see a change in the ticket. And, Joe, that's why there has been real fury in the last day or so about this plan from the DNC to move ahead with this virtual roll call, which many Democrats say, hey, yeah, it was needed when Ohio was trying to game the system and keep him off the ballot. It no longer is because the state pushed off that deadline. And to the Democrats who are opposed to Joe Biden, they feel like rushing this through silences that debate. The Biden team answers simply saying, this is the plan, we're staying with it, and listen to the president. He's not going anywhere, and he can still win.
He's not going. He's not going anywhere. He's not. Let me say again, the day after the debate, I said he needed to consider stepping down. I said, let's wait a couple of days, see what happens, see where this goes. If everybody was right, he was going to lose 10 points, or if his family and him got together and decided he wasn't up to the job, he needed to step aside. Well, the guy with 14 million votes from Democrats in the primary said he's going to stay. And I know that may make some people that worked in the Obama administration angry. I understand that. They didn't like him when he worked in the Obama administrations. The stories I could tell, but I won't. I mean, he says he's staying in it. We don't know what's going to happen. He may have another incident, right? But he's got the 14 million votes. He's got about 90% of the delegates. He's decided he's going to stay in the race, even after the worst debate performance of not only his life, but of that any of us have seen in our lifetimes from a major presidential candidate, even after the tragic assassination attempt this weekend, even after Donald Trump's heroic response to that, even after all that, we're still a 46-46 nation. And you can whisper to everybody, and you can call all the big fundraisers, you can call all your billionaire friends and say, don't give Biden any money, which is what's going on right now. Call all those billionaire friends you want to. Call all the most powerful people in politics and the media and try to push the guy off the ticket. You can do that. You've been trying to do it now for 3 weeks. It's not working. He's saying he's not going anywhere. And if you look at the poll numbers, the people who actually answer these polls, who aren't elitist billionaires in Silicon Valley or in the media or in Washington, D.C., or on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, those people are saying, you know what? We're good with a guy from Delaware. We're good with a state school guy. We're good. That's what they're saying right now. Again, politics is fluid. It could change tomorrow. It could change the next day. The only thing I'm striking back against here are people saying it's over. There's no way he can win.
Well, it's not
That's
helpful.
Just 110 days. And the only thing, Mika, that they're doing, as I said a couple days ago, Democratic pollsters are saying the only thing they're doing is they're hurting Joe Biden with some Democratic voters who hear this from Democrats and then pull away from Joe Biden.
So MAGA Republicans are a lot of things that perhaps some Americans fear in terms of the future of our democracy, but they are unified. And that is something that the Democrats are not. And it's, you know, when that debate performance happened, many, like you, said, let's see what happens. Let's give it a week. Let's see. And the two things that people were focused on was performance and polls. So let's think about that. The polls haven't really moved, right? So if you think about after that debate performance.
Kind of have tightened up
after
in some
that
ways.
Debate performance.
I don't know how that happened.
Okay.
It was a horrible debate. It was just miserable.
Then the president, I mean, I can only name a few because he's been on the road since proving himself. But that NATO news conference, which went well past 8 p.m., so nobody can make those snarky comments, especially those on the Trump side, watching a presidency that Trump had where he didn't do a lot of work daily. But the NATO news conference showed the depth of his dynamic knowledge around the world as he took reporters on
the response
to every region around the world.
The response to David Sanger, please give me transcript, any transcript from any Donald Trump press conference while he's president of the United States talking on foreign policy, and match the transcript and the knowledge, the working knowledge up between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. He confused order to. By the way, it's very funny. David Axelrod a couple nights ago was going through when Joe Biden spoke on Sunday night, he cut a word off. And David Axelrod, of course, had to bring that up.
And then got someone's name wrong.
And then got somebody's name wrong. So does David Axelrod need to get off of TV? I mean, this happens. Media people keep going, oh, Joe Biden confused names. Then they throw to somebody and they confuse a name.
We know we do that. But then he also in that news conference talked about his time in the Senate. Yeah. And how that experience has led to his ability to pass historic bipartisan legislation at a time like right now, where you would think you couldn't get anything through. Right. So then after the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, he held a message to the nation from the Oval Office telling people to bring the temperature down. I mean, he's doing everything right. He's doing events across the country. Crowds are screaming, we have your back. The question is, are Democrats going to have him back? One Democrat, Barack Obama. Because if former President Barack Obama would step up and get behind Joe Biden, that would stop all of this, and that would make all the difference. And it seems right now that after everything that has happened, it seems that unity is more important than ever because the Republicans, Trump Republicans, are going to steal that unified message from the Democrats.
You know, right now it's a choice. Right now it is a choice. Maybe a couple weeks ago there was an idea because everybody was calling, game of telephone, and talking about a brokered convention, an open convention. That was the dream. Or talking about Kamala Harris. Or talking about, Josh Shapiro. That was the dream. That's not going to happen unless something really dramatic changes. Joe Biden keeps telling people, he told Al Sharpton this weekend, he's told Lester Holt, he keeps telling everybody, I'm not leaving this race. And if that's the case, then this race is very clear. It's a choice between Donald Trump and J.D. Vance running the country over the next 4 years, and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So 110 days left, a lifetime in American politics. But at some point, said it last week, Democrats have to come together. They just have to come together unless they want Donald Trump and J.D. Vance controlling Washington, D.C., and changing the way Washington works for the next generation. John.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.